Not me.
Yes, well, for the certificate, yes.
California, he helps students research, plan and write their dissertations.
Could you hear me?
Excellent.
Okay. This is Dr. Hugh Glenn. He helps students plan, research and write their dissertations. He's here today to give a presentation about the writing skills. And before I say any further, I'll pass you on to Dr. Hugh Glenn.
Do I need this? Can you hear me okay in that? No? Yes? No?
Good.
Yes. No?
Yes.
You sure should not be started like this? I guess so. Oh, where did he end? I'm going to start on a negative note. Sorry about that, but that's just the way it is. Let me ask this, are any of you from Australia? 1, 2. Do either of you, or I hope both of you, know of John Hattie?
Yes.
Even if you're not from Australia. I've sort of become recently a big fan of John Hattie, and I've been exchanging a few emails with him and talking thinkers. Hattie has been researching for a lot of years, doing meta-analysis. He has now analyzed more than 50,000 studies that included 2.5 million children aged 6 through 20 for the most part. And in using meta-analysis, essentially what you do is you take data from previous research and put all the data on the same scale. You put everything on a common scale, and then you compare the effects. And the measure is effect size, which Professor Cohen made us. Let me just explain it this way. Let's suppose you're doing a research where you're comparing whether a class taught writing with this method, method A, compared with the results of teaching writing, method B. And at the end, you compare your little t-tests, and you find no significant difference between the two groups. NSD, thousands of studies, no significant difference. But if you go a step further, you might want to ask, well, although the groups do not differ significantly, did one group in fact do better? Did they make more progress than the other group? And that's your measure of effect size. And so that's what Hattie's looked at. He's looked at the gains made and then comparing gains doing A, B, C, or D. He has now looked at least 150 factors, probably going toward 175 now, after 50,000 studies and 2.5 million kids. And we're not going to like his conclusion, because the conclusion is most of what we do in the name of instruction doesn't matter. And it's almost, as far as instruction per se, it doesn't matter. So, pardon me. It's really interesting. This is a graphic that shows the distribution of effect size So here you have 150 different things. And guess what? They make a normal distribution. If you'll notice in the middle, the high point is 0.4. 0.4. That is the average effect size of everything that we do in terms of the factors that he's looked at, some 150 or so. Now, what Patty says is, we're asking the wrong question when we use 0 as the starting point. And we say, okay, if we cut class size, are kids going to do better in smaller classes? And yeah. But the fact is, if you do anything, kids get better. If you do anything, kids get better. Now, so instead of going from 0 and say, oh, by the way, the effect size for a class size is 0.2. 0.2, which, if you're used to play with the Cohen's D measure of effect size, that's called small. So what Hattie says is, hey, look, stop messing around with the small stuff that doesn't matter, and let's look at the stuff that does matter and do more of that in teaching. So this again, a different picture of the same idea. But I've circled 0, not the right place to begin. And the vertical line shows the average effect size for all the things that are done. So, a little graphically, we've got the green area and everything below it. And so Hattie's idea is this: stop messing around with the stuff on the left and the things that matter, the things that end up in better student learning, better achievement. That's the stuff we got to be doing. And it makes a lot of sense to me. But the problem here, as I started out with my negative tone, is that almost everything we do, and certainly in the United States now, we have this presidential blah, blah, blah going on. We got Obama and Romney running for president, and everything that they are advocating is all the stuff that doesn't matter. Romney wants to grade teachers, for example. Obama wants to continue the same stuff in terms of more accountability, more testing, bring a few more to attention. But in any case, the idea here is, Hattie's idea is, let's take the stuff that works and do something with it. Now, here's the bottom. Some factors, in fact, are negative related to achievement. And one is retention, which John claims that the only people who want retention are teachers. But in reviewing what effect retention has on student learning, as you see, it's a negative 0.15. And he has said, he has never found a study that has showed that kids get better being retained than not doing that. But notice some of the other things, the bottom, individual. I asked him about, I'm working with some graduate students at Columbia University, and I asked John about these factors. What about gender? How about single gender education? Teach boys versus together, teach girls, separated. The research there is analysis. It favors boys. Boys do a little bit better than girls in single-sex classes, but both never gets around to doing anything in a classroom that requires the amount of education that you might glean from the master's degree in mathematics, for example. Another one, web-based learning. You want to do something with the kids and the computers and the web. 0.1 effect size. Charter schools. 0.2. The whole thing with multiple intelligence and learning styles. Zip. Nothing. For improved student learning. And I got to tell you, as far as teaching writing is concerned, in my years of experience teaching writing, which I did for many years, that made more of a difference than anything else. What can you do as a writing teacher? Well, basically, you provide 3 forms of feedback. What happens too much of the time is that kids learn the worst lesson ever in reading, in writing. They learn that a first draft is the final product. And kids turn in the paper, common in America, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but in American classrooms, kids submit a paper, teacher collects it, maybe grades it, maybe doesn't read it, but that's it. A first draft is a finished product. And the fact is, anybody who writes knows that a first draft is the beginning of writing, it's not the end. When I taught writing in college, not too popular guy, because the first draft I viewed as a first effort. I sort of likened the first draft to a sculptor without clay. And you write the first draft and you got some clay, and now you can do something with it. You can add to it, move it around, all kind of, you get the idea. One of the key things that I liked about what I did when I was teaching writing is to, number one, give a lot of feedback, and number two, provide the means that students work and rework papers as many times as they needed to do so until further time committed to revising the paper would not measurably improve its quality. That was my rule of thumb. How many times do I have to rewrite this paper? As many times as it takes, to the point where you can say, if I spend more time, it's not worth the effort. And you know what? I don't recall any student ever coming up and asking me, have I done enough? Do I have to write it one more time? Because they know. Students know. Whether spending another day, another few hours would measurably improve the paper, and if they just knew that. Now, the other part of that has to do with the feedback. And as Hattie has found out, that is the factor that matters most in teaching anything. Writing teachers can give 3 kinds of feedback, it seems to me, anyway. One, you don't mark anything on the paper. And that says to the student, keep going. Don't stop now. You're on your way. Second, you write stuff on the paper, which means don't do that. And the third thing, of course, is you suggest do something else. Try something else. But the most important thing is that the student has some basis to move forward. And you either move forward knowing you're doing the right thing, knowing you're doing the wrong thing, or have some ideas coming forth from your teacher that suggests other ways of doing things. So, as a strategy for writing, I cannot overemphasize the need for feedback, and Hattie has given me more ammunition for my point of view than I was doing 25 years ago, knowing this is the right thing to do. And it wasn't that I was so brilliant and figured it out. It happened because of what happened to me as a writer. A lot of years ago, I was invited to talk at the first psycholinguistic colloquium, New Orleans, Tulane University. By the way, it also happened to be the last psycholinguistic colloquium. It never happened again. But at that conference, I I talked about something. And anyway, afterward, Dick Hodges, who was at the University of Chicago and the editor of a very fine journal, published in the American Academic Journal, he said, I like what you said, write it up and send it to me. And, oh, great. That'll be my first published article in a professional journal. It's guaranteed publication, no messing around. Hodges liked it, no editorial board to get by. So I did. A couple weeks later, I received a letter from the editor, the person who marks up all the papers. Josephine Constantino was her name. And on the top page was, Dear Dr. Glenn, we love the article. We want to publish it as soon as possible. Please correct a few things and return it. And I went to page, cover letter, looked at page 1, looked at page 2, looked at page 3. Josephine had written more comments on my paper that I had written in the original paper. So that manuscript traveled from Los Angeles to Chicago for 6 months. And the last letter that I received from Josephine, she said, hey, at the top of page 4, you have used the word objective. Is it okay if we change it to goal? I can't tell you what that woman taught me. Everything mattered. One word mattered. And I guess capstone is not probably the wrong word, but the Journal of Elementary Education published that, and the following month it appeared nationally in Education Digest. No thanks to me, but it was during that process with Josephine that I learned the importance of feedback, because I would write and Josephine would write me and say, this is what you need to do, stop doing this, do something else. And in my own teaching, that became a critical aspect of whatever I did in terms of helping students write. Okay. Let me switch. I'm going to switch gears. They left. Yeah, I'm all done. Okay. Can we get the other one? Yeah. Students in America don't write very well. The way I put it is they don't write effectively. I didn't write effectively. I didn't learn to write until Josephine Constantino got a hold of me. And it was only by the grace of the Almighty that I ever met her. But the reason kids don't write well in America, first of all, they don't do enough of it. You gotta write to learn to write. Yeah, you don't learn to write by not writing. Second, writing is taught principally by teachers who don't know how to write. That's a problem. They're teachers, well-meaning, but they've never written anything. The third thing that happens is that well-intentioned teachers teach kids strategies for writing, or more often rules of writing, which no one who writes ever uses. So if anything, kids are taught the wrong thing about writing. Very rarely anything that has to do with what real writers do when they write. One of the first things that I did in my years of teaching writing, first night of class, I distributed 3x5 cards, and I said, I'm speaking now of high school or college kids, please put on your card, write a rule, write something that your writing teacher told you was very, very important about writing. And then I collect the cards and review them. And, I don't recall ever finding anything worthwhile in terms of what students would say. They would often have something like, it will never begin a sentence with and or but, for example. And yet, if you look at style manuals, for example, a widely used style manual in America is Kate Turabian's manual of style. If you look at Turabian, almost 10% of her sentences in this guide that doctoral students use to write dissertations begin with and or but. So, that the rules that kids were taught were, in fact, rules that writers never use. What do you mean? The skill a writer has to develop is to use black marks if you're writing with a pen or something, black marks in white space, and put whatever it is onto paper so that the reader can take a look at what you've written and reconstruct the meaning intended. And that's not easy. Particularly if you're taught the wrong rules of writing and never have any chance to write, and never get any feedback about what it is you do right. Things that often interfere with good writing. I like one of the rules, and one of my rules is not original, of course, but use strong active verbs, is a major source of clutter. In William Zinser's book, On Writing Well, now in its, I don't know, 200th edition, great book, by the way, highly recommended, it's funny, and you learn a lot about what Zinser calls the convey your message clearly. Willie Struck in his classic book, Elements of Style, said, make every word count. It was the same idea. If you use words that don't serve any purpose, then they clutter. Now, a good prescription for clutter are the forms of the verb to be, and there they are. Is, have, was, were, be, been, being. Anytime you use those, you're going to add more words to your sentences.
Are you going to join us in the gala dinner? Are you going to join us during the gala dinner? Gala dinner is on 13th. Will you be with us? Okay, you're going to be with us. Just you're going to receive the ticket for the gala dinner, that's all.
Okay, that's fine. How yes, sure. Okay.
Yarından değil, şu an bana gerekiyor acil.